It's October 9th, and welcome to episode 102 of the Driving Forward podcast. Whether you're joining us live or listening to one of our 18 platforms, including Wreaths Across America Radio, where we broadcast every Tuesday evening from 7 to 8 p.m. Central Time, we appreciate your support. Coming up through the end of the year, these are the events for GLCS. We're going to ATA MCE in San Diego, October 25th. So that, I think Susan Mayo, myself, Missy Hetland, we're excited to be there and represent. I think Missy Hetland's joining the lead group this year for 2026 with the ATA, so that should be fun. Excited to be there Friday through Tuesday. So I'm actually hopping out on Tuesday, flying to Broker Carrier Summit, doing the fun San Diego to Orlando, which for those of you that have done that before know the direct does not exist. So that's a long one. I'll be at Broker Carrier Summit Tuesday night through Thursday afternoonish. So I think I'm on a panel Wednesday afternoon, and from there we're off to Trimble Insight in New Orleans. So looking forward to that one as well. We have a great announcement coming forth with Trimble. And looking forward to the end of the year. There's probably a few more events we're going to be at as well. Another announcement tonight, we have the Great Freight Gathering in Fridley, Minnesota. And Hillary Drake, Chris Sonic, myself, and a number of other people have come together to put together a freight movement event every month in the Minnesota area. So this is in addition to all of the freight movement events we do across the country, typically at least one every month everywhere. So there's a crew of people that have really come forward and said, hey, we want to do this in Minneapolis going forward. So tonight in Fridley, Minnesota, from 4:30 p.m. to 6:30 p.m., we're getting together, and we'll put this link in the comments. Another event coming up is a freight movement event, and it's the V53 Trucker Bar just before F3 in Chattanooga on the 20th of October. This one's going to be great. It's at the Boneyard in Chattanooga. We had it there last year as well. It was a great event. Lots of people. We'll have a band. Actually, I think we're down to a DJ. We had some issues with the band. I guess you always have issues with the band, but either way, we have a DJ. It should be a great event. Swing on by. We'd love to see everyone there. Next week, we have Melanie Patterson back on. We're giving it a go again. We shuffled a few things around and we're able to get her back on after technical difficulties. We know how important sales and business development is to everyone, and we listened to some feedback. She's back on with us next week to bring a clear and crisp episode. I can talk to Melanie for hours, so we should be good to go this time with good internet. She's back, and we're not going to hold back. Kristy Knichel, second-generation CEO, freight industry powerhouse, and one of the sharpest minds in logistics, returns to Driving Forward for a conversation as real as it gets. Kristy's not just running a $100 million logistics operation. She's rewriting the script on how to lead through chaos, outsmart fraudsters, and invest in tech without falling for the hype. She's been in the trenches. She's made tough calls, and she's built a company that's thriving while others are folding. So today we're diving into the freight fraud epidemic, the hard-earned lessons from the latest down cycle, and the tech bets she's making and avoiding as the industry evolves. So, Kristy, welcome back to Driving Forward.
Well, thank you for having me on. I'm excited to be here.
Absolutely. It's great to see you again. Great to have you on. I think the last time we actually got to sit down and talk was at Broker Carrier Summit I think that was April, early May, somewhere in there. Well, it was bridged. So, but we got to have a nice little dinner at well, it wasn't I'm not sure which place it was. It wasn't oh, I'm drawing a blank. So, but we had a nice little dinner. So
yeah, we did. I can't remember either the name.
So it was a sports bar, but either way, it was good, and it was nice to sit down and chat. So how have you been? It's been 6 months about. So
Yeah, no, doing actually a lot better. I would say, that first quarter, April was really the turnaround, I would say, in our business. As you know, it's been a couple challenging years in our industry, and we're all trying to figure out how to navigate this, new after COVID, section that we've been in. So, I can tell you it's definitely a lot better now than what it was.
Yeah, that's good to hear. And I mean, you're primarily doing intermodal work for the most part, correct?
Yeah, so of our revenue, I would say about 70 to 75% is intermodal. And then we have the truckload and we have the LTL. But on the truckload side, we do probably 65% of that is dedicated drop trailer business that we specialize in.
Okay.
So that's a little bit different than some of the brokerages that are out there, but I like to be a little bit unique.
So I think you're uniquely positioned. So I always say, of our customer base, which is pretty significant, those that are doing well are in dedicated, or are in intermodal to some extent. There's certain asterisks that I put next to that. In some cases, in cross-border business as well. But most certainly in dedicated business, by all means, and so that you've aligned yourself in two of those categories. So that's good to hear. So that's great. So you've seen some upticks over the last 6 months and some stability. And what's your projection then, kind of for the next 6 months or next year?
Yeah, it's interesting because there's a lot of negativity, I think, in regards to the market. Probably a lot of that revolves, well, I know it's going to revolve around the truck side of it, obviously, because the trucking pricing being so low. On the intermodal side, it's been hard to compete against truck pricing. And when that happens, it shifts, from mode to mode in areas. But there's a lot of customers that we ship with that know the value of having both there. So I will tell you, I mean, based on what we see, we actually have we're on a path about 20 million growth this year, which I did not. Yes, I did not expect that to happen. I mean, a lot of it has been organic with the customers that we've had. I'm out there selling, and I was able to bring in a new logo myself, but that's been challenging because the space that we're in now, a lot of the customers are happy with their incumbents. And if I was an incumbent, I don't want to be pushed out for someone else new coming in unless there's some kind of pain or issue going on. But I'm very optimistic. I like to stay optimistic. I feel like we're getting a lot of opportunities, and right now we're going into bid season. And on the intermodal side, probably almost all of our business, maybe 90% of that, is contract business. We do very little transactional. So the contract side really does lock you in, whether it's for 6 months or a year. Some customers are doing 6-month bids when they used to do a yearly bid. And I will say, we've lost some business to the asset carriers out there, but then we get some phone calls of, hey, can you pick up this lane again? And those type of things. So I'll just say, regardless of what everyone's saying out there, from what we're seeing, I feel like there's going to be some changes. It might not necessarily feel like it's going to hit till maybe the end of first quarter. Some of the bids we're going through now won't go into place till maybe first quarter, or March, so to speak. But I just think the more customers you can stay in front of and have those conversations and find those areas that you can help them find some kind of value that you can bring is important. So I just think for me, that's going to be helpful. And there's some other changes in the supply chain that are going on that I think are going to continue to make it maybe a better market for us.
So you hit on a couple of things, and I wasn't necessarily planning on walking down the sales route, but from a sales perspective, right? The finding your niche, and you certainly have a niche. even though you're fairly good size from a brokerage. But that niche that you have, you may lose some business, especially in a down market, and you may lose some business to typically an enterprise level organization, a very large 3PL, a large asset-based organization, whatever the case may be, because you just can't compete there. If they want to win business, they're going to win business. But one of the metrics that I've watched in my 3 decades in the industry is when you start to see organizations like yourself, something that's well established, that has good relationships with customers, start to win that business back. And that tells me that those enterprise level organizations or the larger organizations are start to weaken on their service. So, it's no longer about price as much as it is their service now has surpassed a certain level. So if that's starting to happen to you, that tells me that there is some sort of capacity threshold that we're hitting also. And we're hearing that, and from many of our customers that threshold is they're starting to feel that threshold. So you're starting to potentially acquire some of those lanes that maybe you lost that, you're getting back due to that service. So,
yeah,
which is unfortunate. That's a cyclical thing. It's unfortunate that it happens, but it does. Yep. So it's been happening for ages.
Yeah, and I can tell you, like, some of the customers, it's strictly price. And no matter if we have 100% scorecard, they love us, communication, that's the feedback I get. But the price right now obviously is coming down from the top, right? And I think the interesting thing in our space is a lot of times those larger asset carriers, they're just not as flexible or nimble to changes and to handle some of these like 2 stops or a 3 stop or just demands. And some of these are the bigger, larger accounts that are out there. So we kind of know when that happens, it's kind of like, hey, let's see if they can truly handle it. But I can tell you some of us IMCs that are out there that did lose some business to these larger ones, we are winning some of this business back now already because of those issues that are out there.
No, that's actually really good to hear, not because of the shift, but it's good to hear because of what it means. So,
right.
So let's talk a little bit about freight fraud, and that's surged throughout the industry. And Atri's study, which I have not been able to make it through yet, it's about 70 pages long. It was on my list for this morning, and due to multitude of phone calls and whatnot, I did not make it through it. So maybe for next week. But ultimately it surged over the last 3 years, really is what I did catch on a glimpse through their study. It really jumped in 2023. What's changed in the last 12 to 18 months, in your opinion, that's made this problem so much worse?
I don't know that it's what's changed that's made it worse. I guess what has changed, it's been easier, obviously, to get into the industry. I think COVID, just going back to that time, so many new entrants came in. It's easy to set up as a broker. Obviously, it's out there about the immigrants in the trucks that have the CDLs that shouldn't have the CDLs, and some of the stuff coming down from the administration. I think that stuff doesn't help having them out there. I can tell you we haven't had a whole lot of, like, say, on the fraud side. For us, it's been more of the theft. But the fraud side, I think part of it is we had, a situation on our truckload side where a full shipment, actually the whole truck and trailer was stolen. And that was a carrier we use very regularly, and we vet these carriers just like we should be through using the system. We use Highway and some other systems as well. But again, that carrier then brokered it out to his cousin, who brokered it out to another person, and now the load's gone. And again, it almost makes you kind of lose even trust in the ones that you can trust, because it's like, why would you do that when you've never done that before? I guess you didn't get caught doing that. So for us, we haven't seen a whole lot of that on that side, but I will say on the intermodal side, it's just been more about the theft. And them being able to get into those containers, not having better seals in place. Bolt seals are still being broken into, but having a thicker bolt seal or a figure 8 seal at the top of the container are things that we're trying to talk to our shippers about using, because again, we have some high value freight that you move. And when you have customers that have their name on a seal, that also highlights, here I am, come and open me
Right.
up.
Here's my product.
Yeah.
So,
And I think these are things that maybe weren't really highlighted, years ago, but I think because there's so many that have come into our industry now, and the criminals are just, now it's more criminal organizations from what I'm hearing too, that are getting involved, not just your typical people jumping up on the trains when they're moving slow or stop somewhere. They're just finding other ways to get, their products that they want to do on the street. So yeah, I mean, from that's kind of my perspective on it. On the truckload side, I don't have a huge area there, because that hasn't been a huge issue for us, other than the additional vetting, the calling, making sure if they have Gmail phone numbers or emails and Yahoo addresses and those type of things, and really building those relationships and not just picking whoever's out there on those shipments, I think is really, really important.
no, I think that's fair enough. What I think largely, obviously on the fraud side, that's increased a lot. On the cargo theft side, I think that we're measuring it a lot more. Before, a lot of the stuff was just accepted. I used to run a fairly significantly sized carrier, and we lost several loads a year. That wasn't that abnormal for us to lose it. And we had a drop yard in LA. That was definitely the majority of the loads that we'd lose would come out of there. We had a drop yard in New Jersey. That was a pretty good chance that, if, between Chicago, LA, and New Jersey,
yeah,
I would say 90% of the freight that we would lose would come out of there. And we had a couple loads that flat out got hijacked under gunpoint too. So, that was a possibility, but that was pretty few and far between. So usually it was trailer was stolen, trailer was broken into. From an intermodal standpoint, you touched on that. So, I mean, certainly that scenario. So how do you educate your team and your customers about this? I mean, is that something that you've changed at all in the last year or two?
Yeah, I can tell you there's been a lot more conversations with the railroads in particular, and actually the Union Pacific is putting some more restrictions in place that if, your cargo, they're only going to insure up to 100,000, and paying extra money to get your container put in the bottom well, so they can't open the doors. But shippers are not really willing to pay that.
Right.
So it makes it challenging. It's kind of interesting, because I look at it this way. If you have product that's stolen, they're not replacing the transportation of that stolen product. They'll replace the price, of what that product costs. But now as a customer, you're losing out on selling that. You have to reship it. So why not do upfront things that are going to protect you and protect your end customer? But unfortunately, I feel like that just hasn't happened. But again, we're having those conversations with our shippers, and then the team here internally, clearly having a lot more education and stuff like that. On the intermodal side, high value products. For example, you pick up a shipment, you're supposed to bring it into the ramp. Well, sometimes these are not getting traced into the ramp every night. You're just assuming it's going to come in. Well, we had a load that went to a storage yard, and it was an unsecured yard. We didn't know. The next day it shipped out, but once it got delivered, we had 7 pallets stolen. The seal was actually intact, and the railroad actually had a GPS unit on it that showed that the doors were open on and off all night long. So they have been able to find a way to take the door off the side to not take the seal out. So then that's a claim that doesn't get paid because the seal's intact. So now internally, my team, you are not done until these are tracked into the gate. And if it's not tracked into the gate, we better find out why that's the case. And I would say that's probably the most important thing, is really putting more visibility on that, knowing more about it. I think one of the issues that's still going to be a problem is, again, knowing, you talk to the customers and you're shipping, whether it's liquor, wine, we do a lot of that stuff. What is the value of it? Because you don't necessarily get that up front. And now it's like, are we even going to get that up front for every shipment? Because some shipments are mixed and they're different. So that becomes a challenge.
and getting that surprise that a great example, many years ago, we only had 100,000 in cargo. It's all we needed back then, right? And we were hauling a load of shoes for a customer that we hauled loads of shoes for every day. And that load of shoes was stolen. We found out it was worth $400,000, and had no idea. And we moved a lot of freight. So, that's a great example of knowing what you're hauling and ensuring that you have some idea of the value of it before you end up eating a good chunk. We got lucky. We were able to secure the load, a day or two later, at least the vast majority of it. Yeah, I mean, some things are worth way more than you think they are. So
again, you don't get that information even on the bill of lading of what the value is. And I do think the other issue that I didn't bring up before there too is part of the problem is there is no accountability for the people that do get caught stealing these shipments, especially on the railroad, because they can catch them and then they're out the very next day. So I know that the railroads are doing their work on the Hill and trying to get some stricter enforcement there, because at the end of the day, if they don't do that, they're going to keep doing the same thing over and over again. So
yeah, it's very easy. I mean, the enforcement of this has been poor, and the consequences, that's the word I'm looking for. The consequences have been small. So, but the dollar figures involved are large. So, and they're getting larger, or we're getting a whole lot better at measuring them and shedding light on what's absolutely happening. So this is, a lot of these scenarios are not new. The freight fraud and how that's happening and what we're calling freight fraud today, I think, that's new, but new in the last couple of years. But the what you're talking about as far as literally stealing freight, I don't think that's anything that's been happening for 100 years or more. So in the volumes that is happening, I do think that you're right, that I don't think, I know you're right, that there's organizations now that are targeting targeting areas, targeting shippers, targeting companies. Once they figure out, what's what, they're literally going out and hitting them today. So let's go in. You had said the last year you've done a lot of rebuilding, a lot of reworking Knichel Logistics. So talking about fundamentals, what does that look like in practice during this recession? What have you done from a fundamental standpoint, and how have you looked at those and changed them?
Yeah, I mean, it was really getting back to the basics, honestly. Financial discipline, customer communication, employee engagement. I got involved in having one-on-one meetings with everybody in the company and asking my COO and other people on the leadership team to also have those discussions of what's really happening on the floor, because I felt like we were just putting out fires for 2 years. And we moved into this new building last year, and it was almost like, because of the setup and where we're sitting, it's almost like what happened. And I know part of it was we got to a size, we're going to actually be over 100 million this year. And it's just different. And part of it is really talking to your people. What are they seeing? What do we need to pay attention to? Not saying that everything they say is going to be right, but we need to understand where they're coming from and what they're seeing. And I think that was really important. And I think the other piece, again, is us also putting in place, like I brought on a CFO last year where he has a data background, and really getting the tools in front of us that we needed from a BI standpoint so that we could actually manage on a daily basis, not like a month or two behind when we get our financials. Because we could see, say we made, just for number's sake, $100,000 in a month, right? And we're like, oh, that's great. Well, maybe we should be making 200,000, but we're not seeing that we're losing money in areas that we're not controlling. So a lot of that on the intermodal side in particular is accessorials. That could kill you completely if you're not managing it. So it was really getting reporting around all these areas that we knew we could actually control. And that specifically made such an impact, I can't even tell you, When you couldn't win business, when you couldn't raise margins, we had a lower margins this year. The only way we could make more money was what we could control going out the door. So that was a big piece of it. Another part of it too was putting another person in charge of the operations team that's also running my sales team right now, and really getting with them daily, what's working, what's not working, what mistakes we had. Again, having those conversations, extremely important. And training. Training was something that I find a lot of companies don't have. Even the big billion-dollar companies don't necessarily have a great training program or even one at all. So we had brought in a consultant that had built out a training program for re-transportation that was purchased by Knichel Logistics, and she went out on her own. And so we brought her in to help us start our training program and build that. And I have a person on the team that has been here for 17 years and worked in all the areas except LTL, but she knows enough to be dangerous, right? And continuing to learn. But I think really making sure everyone's on the same page of how we're doing processes in the systems, how we're communicating to customers, and just consistent training. Now, granted, this has just started a few months, but I can tell you, I know that's already made an impact and it'll continue to make an impact. I think that is so important, but at the end of the day, it really is listening and really getting in the trenches with your people. And that's something, like, I always check in with people, but I didn't sit down and have one-on-ones with people in a very long time outside of the leadership team. You know, it's, hey, how's it going? How's this working? You know, that type of thing. But this was really like, let's talk about what we can do. And a lot of it comes down to systems, looking at our systems. What can we do to create efficiencies? What things can we take out that we don't need people doing, whether it's nearshoring or putting the technology in place where we can to help them better do their job. And then we can focus on the right people coming into the company, doing the right tasks and putting the people in the right seats. I know that was a lot.
That was a lot. So that was a lot. And I loved it. I think we could have filled the whole podcast dissecting what you just said in the last like 3 or 4 minutes. So, but I mean, in kind of a recap, it's listening, meeting with your people, and then taking that and you know, going out and training, obviously training building out the systems that you should have, and then implementing that training program around those systems. You know, that's fundamental. So I think that really comes back to how any business, and that's something we do, I think, on a daily basis with many of our customers. But I mean, that's something you need to look at. And how do you scale if you don't understand what you're doing on a day-to-day basis? From a leadership standpoint, you'd never believe how many businesses we go into that we start off most of our engagements with something called a business process assessment. And we meet with stakeholders in the business, C-levels on down, and we talk about what they struggle with on a day-to-day basis. And then we go out to the frontline workers and we talk to them. And you'd never believe how often very large businesses are completely disconnected.
Yeah.
What a CEO thinks is happening, they've bought a new solution. This new solution's the best thing since sliced bread. We're using it everywhere. You go out and you talk to the front line. This thing doesn't work at all. We're just slamming it against the wall. We click 4 buttons because we're told we have to click these 4 buttons, but it doesn't work at all. But the CEO thinks it's the best solution they've ever bought. It should work. It's a good solution, but it's not being used right. You know, so there's not always, but there can be this very big disconnect because there's no communication. You know, that there's no continued improvement. There's no training. There's no touch base to ensure that what you think is happening actually is happening. And that doesn't always mean that the CEO has to go out and touch base with everyone, but it doesn't hurt to go out and say hi to your team. So, and walk that floor. So, especially when you're all mostly under one building, which I wish I was able to do that. It's the one problem with working with remote teams these days is you don't get to do that. So.
Well, and I will say I come in every day and I do walk the floor and say good morning to everyone. And in the time that I was having those one-on-ones, I mean, I will say it was definitely necessary and needed. And that's not necessarily, to your point, where I should be, right? But then it was getting the team to know, like, these are the things that we need to do more of, because communication has always been the biggest issue of, like, this person knows this, but it's not over here. Because I want them to manage. I don't want to micromanage people. I want them to do their jobs, and I don't want to be overseeing and breathing down their necks with this stuff. So there was that point this past year where I had to kind of be involved to really get everyone to see where we're at, because I think we were all like, how did this happen? How did we get here? And part of it is the growth, the scalability, but part of it is also the change and the time that we're in, and just doing things different than what we have in the past.
Absolutely. You 100% nailed it there. So we've worked with over 2,000 companies over 15 years amongst a couple of different, not just GLCS, but many of us have done this for a couple of different places. But with GLCS, it's well over 1,000, and I've been in close to 2,000 companies, and I've done assessments on probably 800 and some odd. And top line at almost every one of them that they struggle with the largest issue at almost every company is communication. Yep. And it doesn't matter if they are well run, because some of them you walk into and they are extremely well run and they're well put together, but they still struggle with communication. And they may have great communication, but they still struggle with communication. I mean, everyone always struggles with communication. You can't communicate well enough. So if you think you're not communicating well enough, communicate more. Find better ways for communication. Do more with communication. And communication is not always your messenger. Yeah. So talking verbally, talking face to face is extremely important. So
well, and I think the other part of that too, real quick, Nate, is like, I think during these down cycles, it does expose the weaknesses even more, and that's where you just have to build that resilience and working with those teams and getting that feedback. And no matter how bad the communication, we're told, is at times, I feel like it's never going to go away, unfortunately.
Right. Nope, it's not. So let's take a quick break. We'll be back in about a minute and a half, talk a little bit about some news. I think we'll hit on the Guy Fieri. I mean, we already talked about some of the freight fraud stuff, but we might as well hit on that and put it down. And yeah, we'll be back in a minute and a half.
If your fleet's downtime looks like chaos, you're missing out on GLCS. In the time-critical world of trucking and logistics, every minute counts. Meet GLCS, your expert partner in managed IT and technology services. We integrate seamlessly with your team, bringing seasoned IT professionals with deep trucking and logistics expertise. Imagine your software updates running smoothly, complex issues resolved quickly, and operations humming with efficiency. GLCS has your back. Our support doesn't just fix problems, it prevents them with our industry connections and proactive approach. We keep your trucks rolling and your brokers working. Think of us as the added resource your company needs to unleash its full potential. Visit glcs.net today and keep your business driving forward. GLCS, where efficiency meets expertise.
I guess we didn't have the second one, but that's okay. All right. Let me pop up my next. Let me share the screen here. As everybody knows, I always struggle with this, so I'm never any good at it. Share screen. All right. So Guy Fieri, stolen trailer, 2 trailers of tequila. So have you watched the video on this?
I actually did not watch it yet.
Okay. All right. So it's worth watching, if anything, just to see what the public actually gets to hear about industry issues. So what ended up happening was 2 loads of tequila came across the border. I don't remember exactly where across the border, if it was Laredo or wherever, but it came across the border on one trailer, got broken apart or cross-docked, and moved into 2 separate trailers or 2 separate loads. The logistics organization that Santo Tequila was working with brokered the load to one trucking company, which then double brokered the load to two other trucking companies. And it brokered both loads to one trucking company, which brokered those loads out to two other trucking companies, which were bad actors. And apparently they might have been in working together. They brokered out the loads to two actual trucking companies, and instead of moving the load to Pennsylvania, they moved the load to LA and had it delivered into their warehouse in LA, of which they were able to recover one load and not the other. So they lost half the load. Now, well, the interesting thing was the tequila was actually a new run of tequila, and they don't have very much of this tequila, so it ended up screwing up some sort of release they were doing or whatever the case might have been. So my take on it really comes down to, we had talked about it before, knowing who you're working with. When you're brokering out to a carrier, in this case, you're brokering out $1 million worth of tequila to a particular carrier. And you were talking about this earlier, the customers aren't necessarily really wanting to work with you in a lot of cases in this particular manner. But if that customer would have verified, and the logistics organization would have verified and said, hey, Knichel Trucking is coming in, and driver Timmy is going to be picking this up with truck number 123. And that doesn't happen, and it's now a different truck with a different driver and a different truck number. You just saved yourself a huge headache and a big insurance claim. But nobody really ever does that. And it's impossible to get people to be on the same page there. There's a few solutions that try to do that, but they're few and far between and not widely accepted. So,
yeah, and to your point, like I talked to a couple of companies, like they're trying to tell the shipper what you said. This is the trucking company. This is the driver. If it's not, let us know. And most of them have said, I don't have time for that. And it's like, really? So there's that aspect of it. And then again, like, did the broker know what the value of the load was that they were hauling? So yeah, exactly. I mean, that the communication, from the shipper standpoint, that's, I think, the fastest way to resolve this issue. So, yes. But there needs to be a movement on the shipper side to adopt change, and it has to be wide. It can't just be a couple shippers. It's got to be the industry. So it's got to be 80+%. It's got to make it hard on people to be bad actors. And then what'll happen is the 20% that don't adopt, or even the 60% that don't adopt, start getting hit a lot more than the 40% that do adopt. If it's a large percentage, even 40%. So this is the same thing with cybersecurity, right? If you create a scenario where you are undesirable to be attacked, it goes to somebody who is desirable to be attacked. If you're not doing training, if you're not doing anything, you become desirable to be attacked, you're going to get attacked. So if people are building in defenses against this, but the shippers need to work with us on this. They need to work with the logistics organizations. So nobody wants to be involved in these things. So yeah, no, I agree. It hurts everybody at the end of the day, and that, I think that's why I'm kind of shocked that sometimes these shippers are not so willing to do some of these things or spend the extra time or the little bit of money that it costs to just truly protect their product that hopefully protects their end customer from all of these things that are happening.
I'll give a shipper a feed of almost any truck coming into their facility if they want. Just give me a call. We'll figure that out. So we'll work with every one of your brokers and put them a feed up on it. So depending upon what you're doing, we can tell you brokers, carriers, whatever the case might be. We've done it in another space where it's somewhat closed down. Obviously, if you're a huge shipper, it's a little different, but it is something that is not that hard to reach out and get an identification of what truck, what trailer, who's coming in. Most brokers, I mean, you're capturing the carrier most of the time. In your case, are you capturing tractor and driver and on the intermodal side, or are you typically have a relationship with them?
Yeah, it's different. It's a relationship. They don't even have to have the ELDs or any of that because of the miles for the most part. So it is relationship based there. But I will tell you this, like on that truck side, we did have a load of sake stolen, and it did come down to that facility having video of the actual trucking company that came in. We were able to track them down. They told us where they took it to, which went from NorCal to LA. Everything seems to end up in LA. But by the time the police get there, then the load's already done. And again, it's as simple as, well, you have video cameras, so why can't you just have your person check the name, check, the carrier name and all of that stuff? Because again, that's a huge way to, avoid these things from happening.
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, there's all kinds of amazing solutions out there today that if we start tying them together, like gen logs and everything, that eventually it's going to make it very, very difficult. But it all comes down to that shipper initially saying, let's check this first. Now, a carrier can pick it up and take it to another warehouse, cross-dock it, and there's nothing we can do about that. So there's nothing you can do about that. And that can be something stupid, or drop it and somebody else can come and scoop it up or give it to there's some things that you can do that there's completely outside of everyone's control. And those things can happen. But most of the stories I'm hearing are not those situations. There's someone picking up this way. So, all right, I won't do any other news stories. So let's get back to the rest of the story. So you've done a number of tech investments over the last year or so too, as well. You were talking highway, any other things, or I guess we don't even have to name them. That's up to you. I'll leave that up to you. But anything that generically, or if you want to name them, that's fine. But anything that's delivered a huge impact to your organization that you'd want to talk about?
I mean, I would say for right now, we have 3 TMS platforms for 3 modes, which we're going to be looking at getting it down to 2. Thought that was a great idea years ago to try to have the best system in each. But and I will say we have TIE for LTL, we have Quantum Edge for intermodal, and McLeod for truckload. But with that being said, we have, the HubSpot, we have Bamboo for HR, we have the highway system. I think, what we're trying to do is see what we can get out of those systems right now from an efficiency standpoint, what we're not using, what's there. But we are looking at AI. There's 3 companies we're talking to right now. We have not chosen one yet, because I will say we're being cautious about that, because I don't necessarily want to be the guinea pig, but I also want to see what is working well and what's not working well with other companies in that space.
Now, when you say you're working with AI, you mean a carrier-facing bot or a customer-facing bot, or what do you mean by AI?
So AI would be basically looking to do our tracking for us in our systems, like that type of stuff, taking away the tasks that aren't critically thinking tasks, grabbing appointments, bots grabbing gate reservations for the railroads, maybe even sending out emails potentially. We have a whole list of things, but we have to pick one that we're going to start with. And we were really looking at the tracking specifically on the intermodal side in particular. And there are 3 companies that we have engaged in looking at. And there's one in particular that's been out there, I think, a little bit longer, has more customers on board, and they're currently working with another customer in our space in the intermodal system. So that's attractive for us. And I'll name those names. We have them out there: Drumkit, Ventus AI, and Debales are the three companies. I think Ventus AI has an interesting solution where they're not using APIs. I don't know a whole ton about that, where the other ones are like API, because the intermodal system that we have is not API friendly, so to speak. So trying to see what those differences are. But again, we want to take away that the tasks that are non-critical thinking from the team members that can help them, because I can tell you, like, an average person might spend a couple hours or so tracking, even though it gets dumped in, it's not necessarily right, and the ETAs aren't right. And then even appointments, it's a problem.
Yeah. Appointment solutions are amazing. The tracking, all of those solutions are absolutely amazing. Any scenario where you can get 80% compliance on them, that's just a huge reduction in man hours. And why wouldn't you use them? So
Right.
I mean, I haven't been sold on the negotiation end yet, so I know there's some companies that are using it there, but on the repetitive tasks like appointments and tracking and others, invoicing, there's some back office applications that are out there too that I really like. So
another thing real quick too that we notice is an issue in our industry is some of the railroads at certain ramps, we have to get gate reservations to even bring in a container. And if you have them and for some reason you can't bring the container in, appointment changes, if you don't cancel them, then it also goes against our scorecard with the railroad. So there are bots out there and companies using to do those type of tasks too, to cancel them. So again, taking that human aspect out of those monotonous tasks. And
the amount of intermodal tech that's jumping up is almost unfathomable. It's crazy, and it's all almost hard to measure at the moment. So we've been definitely watching that. The trains have always been so hard to work with.
Yeah.
So that's what we've been interested in. But it'll be interesting to see what that landscape works like or looks like when AI fully adopts there, because you're able to replicate the human interaction with the rail line. So
yeah.
I'm excited about that because it really hasn't advanced like it should. So
no, it's like so far back in the days, it's very challenging. And yeah, there's just not a whole lot of options out there. There's a company called RailLink that obviously has their data that they can dump in. You have to pay for it. We've been looking at that, but we get sponsored by the railroad, data thrown in for our tracking. But again, I don't know if it's much different, but you have a person that's manually looking to see where it is. And is it really going to get to Chicago in 2 days? And, oh, by the way, I have an appointment in Baltimore on this day. And really having to try to determine, is this going to work? Do we need to change the appointment already? And it might just get delayed when it interchanges. So there's so many different things there that it's been challenging in the railroad space. So I'm hoping to see some more technology come out of that. There's companies I have talked to that are trying to fix those problems. I just don't know if the railroads are at the point where you can yet.
Right.
Where we want them to. So
I don't know when they will be. I don't know how much they've advanced in 20 years. We think trucking is behind. The railroads have just been the struggle. So, but yeah, I mean, you'd think that they'd be there. So they have advanced. They've just not made it easy to work with.
Yes,
they've most certainly advanced. There's some of their technology is amazing. So, but they've just not made it easy to work with. So.
Well, I was just going to highlight a point real quick. So like with some of the railroads, you get a certain program with volume where you get a dedicated box, so to speak, during peak shipping times, right? And if they're going to guarantee you that box, you think they'd guarantee you the gate reservation, and they don't.
Yeah.
So it's like,
Yeah.
give me a box if I can't even bring it in the ramp. Now it's going to cost me
Right.
money to load it and sit it on the side, you know?
Yeah. Well, that might be the plan.
Right.
Yeah. Who knows? So yeah. Lots of headaches in your business too. So
Yeah.
lots of headaches. So when you're buying new tech, do you have a framework or a way that you evaluate it internally that's worked for you?
I can tell you we're probably at a point where we're just kind of going down that road, Nate, where, you know, John, my COO, was overseeing operations. I put someone over charge of that, and he's in charge of tech now, and really being the focus on the tech side and kind of bringing in all the different companies, gathering the information. And I mean, we're having the leadership meetings and the talks, but to be quite honest, I think that's something that we probably need some more advice or maybe help with. Because again, there's no one that's outside really evaluating, well, this might make sense over that, or have you thought about this? I mean, I reach out to a lot of companies and talk to them about what they're doing, but that's probably, I mean, that's one piece of it, right?
Yeah. Obviously, word of mouth is one way. So that's always, I think that's what everyone does in the industry is what do you think of this? What do you think of that? And that's certainly one way of doing it. But to your point, so another question, kind of moving off the subject of technology. So the last time you were on was probably, I'm guessing, I didn't look, was probably February, I think. And you know, these are different times. We've obviously done a lot, and February feels like it was 2 lifetimes ago to some of us that are leading the charge these days. So how have you changed as a leader since February, and you know, why?
That's a very good question. So I do have a CEO coach that I've been working with, and I can tell you I've had to change as far as just the way that I lead and talk to the team, whether it's being more assertive, but in a professional way without, you know, getting upset or being too pushy, but making sure I'm like succinct to the point that, you know, what we need to do and moving in urgency, I think is one of the things in particular. I've had to be coached and mentored on how I change, you know, how I talk to people, how I approach the conversation even, because I'm like a fixer and I want to run and do it right away, but sometimes it doesn't come out the best way. So I really do think working with my coach, I've had to do things that put me in a very uncomfortable position, and that's having uncomfortable conversations. And not that I wouldn't have them in the past, but I had to have a lot more of them. And I had to make sure that the team understood that we have to get comfortable being uncomfortable, because it's going to be uncomfortable with trying to scale this company, making changes. What we did, you know, for the last 20 some years to get here isn't going to get us to the next level. And I think just what I've learned through all the big mistakes I've made, and I've made a lot of mistakes, and just knowing that I just have to not be afraid to tell them what I need from them, and putting people in a place where, what do you want to do? Because I feel like you did really good up to this point, but now I feel like you might be better over in this area, and not afraid to have those conversations. But I really did have to push the team. I would say that was the most challenging thing, with being stern and truly just coming into my own, like, this is my company. And if I don't make the right decisions and push them to do the things I need them to do, no matter how uncomfortable it is, like, we could not be here tomorrow. People won't have jobs, and including myself. I mean, I know things could still, you know, change. I could sell the company or whatever, but that's not where I want to be. I need people doing what I need them to do, and us being aligned as a team. And I think the other thing is putting the leadership team together. Before, it was just me and John, and I kind of let John do a lot of the things, and I just, you know, kind of, not that I sat back all the time, but I did my thing and he was doing his things, and he gives me updates. But now we have a whole team together. My CFO is on that team, and my director of sales and operations, and my marketing, I call her chief of staff now too. And then our agent rep and the trainer, we're all on the same team that we meet twice a week now. really talking about what's most important to tackle, and and really just leading that, letting them have the discussion, putting my 2 points in, but really letting them also decide what's most important. But if I feel like something else should be, I need to explain why I think that is more important. But yeah, I would say those are the things that I've had to do, and it's been uncomfortable. But now I feel more comfortable being uncomfortable because I've been doing it now for most of the year.
Sure.
Not being afraid to have those conversations where before, I'd kind of approach them. And again, I want them to know that I trust them, but sometimes I need to say, like, no, this is the direction we need to go. And even I have a very aggressive growth plan. And we did have a meeting recently where I had to say, like, guys, I'm okay that if we have to take a little bit of step back to ensure the foundation is right before we continue to move forward. Because I think they just want to keep going, but I need to make sure they hear what I have to say about where we're at, and not be afraid to do that. So I had to show up more. I had to show up just different voice tone as well.
No, I appreciate that. And, we're going through our own evolution, I think, as well. That sounds very similar. So in a lot of ways. So, but definitely appreciate that clarity and as a leader in a business, I think at some point you kind of determine this is the path that you want to go on, and suddenly the light shows up at the end of the tunnel, and you decide you're going to go there, and if you're going to go there, you're going to lead everybody with you, and you start dragging them along. Some people may fall off along the way, and that's okay. You accept that. That's the hard part, right? So, but you do realize that you have to move. So, and sometimes that's you changing. And if you can't change, then you're not going to make it to where you want to go. So,
right. And the other part of it too is kind of like, it's funny because I used to tell my dad, like, you don't need to be here. Like, you need to leave. Like, you're interfering and stuff, right? Well, I can tell, like, I'm interfering and stuff. And it's like, hey guys, like, if you don't want me interfering in some of this stuff, then this is the stuff we need to get fixed, and with urgency, an urgency that we've never really had. And I didn't know that until, like, we were at this point we were at. So
sure.
I think that's important too.
No, that's great. So what's next for you, Kristy? Where are you headed? Are you got any conferences coming up? Anything in the immediate future?
Yep, I will be at BCS with you as well in Orlando.
All right.
Yeah, speaking about the women in logistics there, and then of course I have a couple intermodal functions towards the end of the year. I'll be attending, and I'll be at a CEO coaching event in San Diego in November as well, and so that's pretty much what's on my path there. And I think going into the next year, just focusing on sales. The team has kind of given me marching orders to get out there and sell and build the brand and let us do what we need to do now internally. And I am giving them my blessing to do that. And that's what we'll focus on.
Beautiful. Well, I appreciate you coming on, and it's great to have you on for the second time. We'll see you here in a few weeks at BCS. I get in late Tuesday night, so I'm going to miss most of Tuesday. I have to do the ATA thing in San Diego. So, but we'll be there Tuesday through Thursday. Hope to. I know I'll see you. I'll hunt you down. Yeah. So, but it's kind of hard to find you. You're half my size. So,
all right. Yeah, definitely there.
All right. Well, you can find Kristy at KnichelLogistics.com. Anything else that you want to put out there as far as how to get you?
No, well, just LinkedIn. I'm on LinkedIn, and I'm pretty visible out there. So, yeah, check us out.
All right. Appreciate you, Kristy. Thank you very much.
Yep. Thank you.
All right. This industry doesn't reward the loudest voice. It rewards the clearest one. And right now, freight is full of noise. Fraud is evolving faster than regulation, and tech is promising more than it can deliver. And the volatility is the new normal. But clarity, that's rare. And it's what separates the operators from the opportunistic. If you're chasing volume without vetting, still buying into the hype without proof, or still reacting instead of leading, you're already behind. The ones who make it through this cycle will be the ones who know what they stand for, what they're building, and what they're not willing to compromise. This isn't about surviving the market. It's about shaping it. Freight doesn't wait, and neither should you. So stay curious, stay informed, and keep pushing the boundaries of what's possible. Until next time, drive forward with purpose and innovation. Thanks for watching.